Okay, we're going to continue our discussion of political culture and socialization in the United Kingdom. One of the things that's interesting about the United Kingdom is that there's a relatively low level of political interest and political participation when compared to other European countries. There could be many reasons why this would occur. Obviously, one would immediately question, is this because of as a result of citizen apathy, because they perceive the regime as being illegitimate? That's possible. It could also be possible because the United Kingdom utilizes FPTP, which tends to produce a two-party system. Generally speaking, research has shown that two-party systems produce lower participation rates as opposed to multi-party systems. This is probably due to the fact that lower levels of voter choice tends to have the effect of decreasing voter turnout. But whatever the reason, we typically know that there is less political participation and political interest in the United Kingdom than there are to similar countries in continental Europe. Another element of political culture and socialization in the United Kingdom is respect for tradition. And if you recall, when we talked about legitimacy, that's one of the ways that a regime is viewed as being legitimate, is this claim of tradition. This is the way things have always been. Any change that occurs typically happens gradually. So if the society values tradition, then that claim of legitimacy by respecting tradition definitely is going to go a long way. There is political socialization in the United Kingdom takes place primarily through government-run schools. Very similar to the United States, at some point during, or it's probably at several points during students' educational careers, they'll receive instruction in political principles that are important to United Kingdom political participation, such as the importance of voting, importance of participation, traditions of the country, and so forth. Elite recruitment. Let's go ahead and define that term, elite recruitment. Elite recruitment is the process by which a society decides who is in the elite and who is not. Every society that is large, or even some smaller societies, has a way of stratifying itself. So you have to have a way to distinguish between who is elite and who is not elite. Typically what we find in Western democracies or industrial democracies, it's the acquisition of educational credentials, but not just any college degree from any university. Certain universities are thought to be, and perhaps are, more of an indication of status than other universities, and individuals from those universities who have degrees from those universities typically are held in higher status. This is not necessarily to say that the educational product of those educational institutions is superior. It's just that those institutions act as sort of a filter between the elite and everybody else. In the United Kingdom, the elite recruitment is handled mainly by slang term Oxbridge, which refers to the two major universities in the United Kingdom, Oxford and Cambridge. A disproportionate number of members of parliament, other governmental leaders, and leaders in the private sectors have attained educational degrees from Cambridge and Oxford. Before these individuals went to Cambridge and Oxford, they went to what are called somewhat confusingly, public schools, which in the United States, since we would call them private schools. To make it clear, these are not government-run schools. The reason why they were called public schools is they were designed to train the second and third sons of noble gentlemen for public service. So these elite private schools, or we could also call them perhaps in the U.S. prep schools, that acts as somewhat of a gateway to these elite colleges of Cambridge and Oxford. Major social cleavages in the United Kingdom, first off, would be class. Social class isn't just about money and so forth, it's about family in the United Kingdom. So obtaining large amounts of money isn't always a guarantee of transmission or transitioning from one class to another. In terms of social mobility, the United Kingdom does have social mobility. In fact, it probably has more, well, not probably, it does. It does have more social mobility than does the United States, but voters still will vote along class lines far more often than what we would find in the United States. Religion is a social cleavage. Even though the United Kingdom is a highly secular country, there are two major religious divides. The first major religious divide is going to take place in Northern Ireland, where there's a divide between Protestant and Catholic. This is not necessarily a fight over theology. What it is the dividing line between Protestant and Catholic closely mirrors social class dividing lines. So that you have Protestants who enjoy positions of status and upper class and controlling resources and power, and Catholic population does not. Another religious divide that's becoming increasingly relevant in the United Kingdom is the divide between Muslim and non-Muslim. As the United Kingdom has had an influx of immigrants from the Middle East and so forth, these individuals continue to practice the faith that they brought with them, Islam, and that's presented a problem in the eyes of many people in the UK. So that does serve as a cleavage. Race is not typically a social cleavage in the UK, but with increased immigration, it is being viewed as a social cleavage. And then sex. In pretty much every society, there is a distinction between men and women in terms of class. It can be in terms of status, not in terms of class. In terms of status, men disproportionately hold positions of wealth and power as opposed to women. So that is going to be a social cleavage. And then there are regional differences where industrial regions are going to have obviously more resources where they did up until a point. And then as the UK transitioned to a post-industrial society and continues to transition to a post-industrial society, those areas become more blighted. Recent milestones in the United Kingdom in terms of the last 100 years or so. First would be the rise of the welfare state. It starts before World War II and then rapidly accelerates after World War II. Again, the welfare state is the idea that the government is going to guarantee a minimum level of existence from the time an individual is born to the time an individual dies. Another one is going to be the loss of empire. The United Kingdom prior to World War II had an empire that stretched the globe. After World War II, probably by around 1950, most of that empire was gone. Through the process of decolonization, the United Kingdom turned over governing power to directly to the people that lived in those former colonies. Okay, continuing on with economic system. The economy of the United Kingdom would probably be most properly classified as a mixed economy. The definition of a mixed economy is an economy that is somewhere between capitalism and socialism. Let's go ahead and talk specifically about capitalism and socialism and define those terms more precisely. In a capitalist economic system, the major factors of production, land, labor, capital, and management, or sometimes known as entrepreneurship, are privately owned or privately controlled. In a socialist economic system, the factors of production, land, labor, capital, and management are controlled or owned by the government. So a mixed system is somewhere in between, which, yes, that's a wide range of variability, but most economic systems in the world today really are mixed. So to even make it more precise, we would say the United Kingdom is a mixed economy, but it's still heavily capitalistic. The government still does own some major factors of production or heavily controls them. For example, the government has a sizable share in control of the communication system, the BBC. And at various points in time, they begin to sell off other assets like coal fields, oil fields, and so forth. But most economic activity is in the private sector. In the United Kingdom, there's a greater acceptance of the role of the government in planning the economy. There's two major viewpoints on how the government should intervene in the economy. The first one is called Keynesian, and the other one is monetarist. A Keynesian will believe that the government should regulate or prevent, or at least ameliorate the negative impacts of economic depressions and recessions. This is done through the injection of money into the economy in the form of deficit spending. So what a Keynesian would say is that whenever you go into a period of downturn, a depression or a recession, the government should stimulate the economy by deficit spending, and then whenever the economy recovers from the depression or recession, then what you'll do is you'll increase taxes a little bit to the point that you're able to pay off the debt that was incurred. This is in contrast to a monetarist, and what they believe is that the government should stay out of the economy and allow the market to kind of sort itself out. What I'm describing is referred to as fiscal policy. Let's define that term. Fiscal policy is the taxing and spending policy of a political system. I also like to throw in the idea of borrowing, taxing, spending, and in the case of the United States, increasingly borrowing. Many countries do deficit spend, and that has an impact on the economy. But strictly speaking, fiscal policy is the taxing and spending policy of a country. This could be contrasted with monetary policy. Monetary policy deals with the amount of money that is in circulation relative to the demand for currency in the economy. Monetary policy is usually set by central banks. In the case of the United States, it's set by the Federal Reserve. In the case of the United Kingdom, it's set by the Bank of England. This is a little bit different than the rest of the European Union. The United Kingdom, while it is still currently a member of the EU, it hasn't quite invoked its prerogative to leave, although that probably will happen. Even though it's still a member of the European Union, it never signed on to the euro, which means that it retained control of its monetary policy. So the legal currency in the UK is the pound, and the value of the pound is set, of course, by the interaction of supply and demand with the government through the Bank of England, regulating the amount of money in circulation. So as I previously stated, the Bank of England is responsible for setting monetary policy in the United Kingdom. It is said to be the central bank, much like the Federal Reserve in the United States is the central bank or banker's bank, controlling the supply of money. This is because the United Kingdom did not sign on to the euro in the EU, and while it is a member of the single market and has access to that currently, that's going to change whenever they begin the process of withdrawal. Whenever the UK withdraws from the European Union, they will have to negotiate trade deals with the European Union, which may or may not be to the benefit of the United Kingdom.